They thought I was dead. Hey everyone, Joey here, aka Animus, and today, it has been so long since I've managed to upload a video to this channel that I have literally become a legal adult, and also it is getting into year-end list season, so I thought, what better time is there to inaugurate a new tradition of yearly vinyl updates? I finished my series going through all of these records I had up to this point not too long ago, but that was released intermittently over the course of about 2 years, so along the way I accumulated a whole lot more stuff that I'm ready to show off. So to kick things off, just a few days ago, Banquet Records did another blowout sale where usually you buy a bunch of LPs that are either overstock or slightly damaged for £5, but this time some things were even cheaper than that, and the overall quality was just absolutely amazing, and I managed to bag myself 11 different records for just over 30 quid, and I was absolutely overjoyed with what I found. So I'm going to run through those first, and the big one for me was Big Thief, Dragon New Warm Mountain, I Believe in You. Literally before I went to the sale, I was thinking about, like, theoretically what would be one of the best things I could find here, and this album, which was my favourite album of 2022 and one of my favourites of the 2020s decade so far, was like right up there, so it was just unreal that it actually turned up. And this was the one record out of these that was a tenner, but that's just for having this tiny corner ding, so really brilliant bargain for an absolutely beautiful record that has an incredibly strong level of personal attachment with me. Big tick on my bucket list of records I really wanted to get, and I'd heard some kind of mixed things about the pressing here, and yeah, it's not quite as amazing as this album would deserve in terms of sound quality, but it's nothing distracting either, and it's a pretty lo-fi record anyway, so it doesn't detract too much from the overall experience. Then I picked up the Anti-Dawn EP from Burial. This is definitely one of his most ambient, sparse and minimal releases he's ever put out. No garage beats to be found on here. It almost borders on like a dark ambient sound collage at points. So this is one that I forgot how tricky this thing was to sort of decipher and get into, but it's certainly very evocative at setting that usual nocturnal atmosphere that Burial's great at, so I'm very happy to have this one on vinyl as well for £2, which is absolutely insane. And then Future Sound of London, music from calendars 2017 to 2020. Future Sound of London released one track every month, and I think have been like for the last sort of 7 years or so on their Bandcamp, and I haven't been following those, but this is like a compilation of the sort of highlights of those first 3 years, and this is a real treat. I just played this morning, and it's definitely sometimes more of a minimal and atmospheric take on their sound, but there's a brilliant mix of some otherworldly and kind of slightly unsettling and ominous tracks, and some other pretty gorgeous and ethereal moments, so definitely would recommend. Then I got GoGo Penguin with their remix album of their self-titled release, originally like an upbeat contemporary jazz album that I was a big fan of, but this remix album has such a stacked lineup of artists I love: Cornelius, Machine Drum, Roan, Squarepusher, Nathan Fake, 808 State, Clark. Only like 2 artists on here I hadn't previously heard of, and even though remix albums are often a bit of a mixed bag, this is just unbelievably consistent in how many exciting new directions it takes the original pieces. Definitely glad I bought this despite not having previously heard these remixes, and it's 1 disc red, 1 disc blue, with the blue being all lovely and marbled. Great stuff. Then I got Kennebec with Departure. I don't think this guy is super well known in the realms of down-tempo and chill-out electronica, but I just came across this in like early 2020 lockdown off like a random Spotify recommendation, and it was just so magical to me at the time. This very warm and organic and naturalistic blend of a lot of orchestral and East Asian instruments and luscious field recordings and everything. So coming across this again was a very nostalgic experience, and it's a beautiful, warm and uplifting listen that absolutely holds up with me, and I think it's criminally underrated, to be honest. We've got Burial again, this time with Code 9 and their Fabric Live. I guess it's like a live compilation, but this is on 4 discs, which is absolutely unreal for £2 again. Like, what is going on? It's an absolute steal. Haven't found the time to put this one on yet, but I'm definitely very much looking forward to it. And then, strangely enough, this Lapalux Amnioverse, this is another record that's taken me back to lockdown, personally, which is strangely nostalgic in some way for me, weirdly. But this is kind of like a very densely atmospheric, breakbeat focused bit of electronica on the Brain Feeder label, and I'm just kind of taken aback by what gorgeous packaging this thing has. There's all this like silver foil lettering, there's a whole booklet inside, and the 2 discs are on this lovely white with pink splatter vinyl. It's really like a piece of art I'm holding in my hands right here. So yeah, another thing that was great to find. And then I got Merzbow Venereology. I do actually genuinely enjoy this album. I think I haven't explored much harsh noise music, but this is probably my favourite record in that genre I've checked out. It's a little bit difficult to put my finger on exactly what makes this a cool and interesting musical experience to people who can't personally relate to it. But this is honestly just like musical brutalism, like a pure sensory textural experience, really, almost like a psychedelic experience to actually listen to all the way through. It definitely helps that the original sounds Merzbow uses are so unconventionally sourced and ever shifting, as unbelievably abrasive and not for everyone as they are. This is also one of the coolest pairs of discs in my entire collection. It's called Butterfly Wings. It's just like a bright explosion of colours. I would have definitely been prepared to pay a lot more for this thing, but I'm very glad I found it. And then I got the Oneohtrix Point Never KCRW radio session. I'm yet to put this on, but it's got some great tracks of his like Chrome Country, which I'm excited to hear in their new iterations. Then Rival Consoles Articulation. This is one of my favourite albums from the guy. If you're into Jon Hopkins' more upbeat and rhythmic material, this is definitely for you. And very unique packaging here. Very futuristic, minimal vibe going on here with the clear sleeve and the clear vinyl. And finally, I got Annika by Teebs, sort of an electronic and instrumental hip-hop producer. This isn't quite as bright and explosive as Ada, which I think I definitely prefer, but this is still very lovely, particularly to have on as a background atmosphere. More minimal and subtle vibe to this one. Stacked feature lists like Sedan Archives, Panda Bear, Pink Sifu, and it's a lovely purple marble pressing as well. So there were even more things I could have picked up, like Floating Points Late Night Tales, Cabaret Voltaire, or a Sophie 12-inch single, but I'm absolutely thrilled with what I got here. This is like the greatest value vinyl haul I've ever had, so definitely going to be going back next year with several tote bags to fill. Right, going alphabetically with my new finds, I've got Voulez-Vous by ABBA. This is just full of disco and pop classics. I definitely don't have to explain to you why ABBA frickin' slap. You already know exactly why. And also I got a new pressing of Big Science by Laurie Anderson. I had an old, slightly battered one last time, but this is a lovely new red version, which I believe is remastered. And it's been brilliant to see this record having like a TikTok resurgence, surprise it or not, with Oh Superman in particular. This is just definitely a wonderful piece of very innovative avant-garde 80s 80s pop, which you should definitely check out. And then I'm so excited about this one. I managed to pick up the new repress of Selected Ambient Works Volume 2 by Aphex Twin, which is on my t-shirt right now. I honestly thought this was never going to happen. I was thinking even about someday spending like 200 quid on a second-hand copy of a old original pressing, but we did get the repress, and not only that, it's an expanded edition. Stone in Focus is back along with some new exclusive tracks. It's got beautiful gold foil on it. I adored going to the Tate Modern listening party of this recently, but I cannot wait to play it on vinyl for the first time. It's one of my favourite albums of all time, and I'm so happy to have it in my collection. Then last time I had the Black Midi album Cavalcade, but now I've completed the trilogy with Schlagenheim, their first record, also probably the most punky and noisy one of all, and also Hellfire, their most recent one, and looks like it'll be their last, unfortunately, given they've split up. But both of these have absolutely crazy artwork to have blown up to this size as well, and Hellfire's on a nice translucent red as well, and came with a little flexi disc of 953 Live. Then I've got Merzbow again, this time with Boris. This is actually another find from similar sale the previous year. It's a very interesting fusion of experimental rock and harsh noise music. It's not always like intertwined. Sometimes it almost feels like Boris are playing on one side of the room and Merzbow's on the other, but weirdly works in making just like a very visceral experience. Like I said, adding that sort of intense sensory aspect to the songs, and also just gorgeous, very edible looking bright pink vinyl. I picked up another Bowie record, Heroes. Now this wasn't a super cheap bundle, it's without its cover, but for the price I got it for in perfectly good condition. Really happy to have this one. This is one of my favourite Bowie records from his Berlin era. Super pleasantly surprised to hear like an entire ambient second half that he made with Brian Eno. Dude was unbelievably creative, beyond what I'd say like a lot of people are aware of in terms of how many genres he branched out into. Very happy to have that one. I've got the Dave Brubeck Quartet, Time Out. I believe this was previously my grandpa's. It had some very good taste. This is some lovely, lively, quirky jazz music. You probably know Take 5 of this one. And oh man, I don't even know how to introduce this one. This arrived just a week ago. It's the first ever vinyl pressing of my favourite album of all time, BT's This Binary Universe. I still wake up each morning and look at this on my shelf and go, oh my god, it's actually real. I didn't think this was ever getting a vinyl pressing, if I'm being honest. BT had said it just like wasn't suited to this format or something, but it is finally here with this glorious alternate artwork. I was hoping they'd do this with like the Morse code, where you can sort of change the way the artwork looks with these different inner sleeves. It looks absolutely beautiful, and I so hope it sounds as beautiful. Probably gonna dim the lights, put this on, and cry a lot, probably. This is absolutely unreal, and I'm overjoyed that I can actually have my favourite album of all time on vinyl. Otherwise it would have just felt like something was missing. But now, yeah, something feels like it's been completed in my collection. Thank you, BT, for making this a reality. And I already had a bunch of Kate Bush records to show you guys, but I now have one of my big favourites, probably my second favourite behind Hounds of Love actually, which is a sort of mildly unpopular opinion of mine, but I absolutely adore Ariel. It's an all-time favourite for me. It makes me cry all the time, and I think it's just a beautiful, cohesive experience, particularly with that second disc, whose only parallel is Hounds of Love in my eyes. This is a truly underappreciated masterpiece, and I was able to get this absolutely gorgeous Fish People reissue, which I think is remastered. Quite expensive, this thing, but you absolutely feel that in this packaging and hear it in the pressing. Thick, sturdy 180-gram vinyl. Gorgeous looking vinyl. The colour of the sea and sky of honey in the lyrics of the album and on the cover. It's got a big booklet of lyrics and images. Just another one of those pressings that makes you feel like you're not only owning the album, but a work of visual art as well. Absolutely worth every penny, and if you haven't heard Ariel, or at least not returned to it in a while, I would so strongly recommend holding space for it, if you will. And then I also believe I didn't have The Sensual World last time. Another brilliant 80s classic. Not a whole lot to say on this one, hasn't already been said. I would just absolutely love to complete my entire Kate Bush collection, to be honest, because it's such a wonderful discography. Big fan of Can. Last time I had Targo Margo and Monster Movie, but now I've also got Ege Bamyasi, one of their absolute best records. This thing is so fun, but especially like tight and accessible within their discography, while still making room for some absolutely wild and idiosyncratic experimentation. Lovely, fun, translucent green pressing here as well. Like with Kate Bush, another band who I want all of it. I want to collect all their stuff. Definitely turning into a bit of a Can completionist. Got Captain Beefheart's Trout Mask replica, a bit of an infamous experimental 60s rock album here. I picked this up having not actually listened to it, as another real bargain, and I still can't quite decide how I feel about this thing, but what it definitely is not ever is boring. Real interesting, unique thing to have in my collection, and some very iconic artwork as well to have on vinyl. Carbon-based Lifeforms. If you don't know these guys, they're in the genre called Sybient, like psychedelic, ambient, but also they've got a bit of a kind of acid tinge to their sound, but they are just one of my favourite bands of all time, if I'm being honest. Gone on record so many times about how much I just love to be immersed in the musical worlds these guys build, and this is their most recent album, Seeker, the only one I have on vinyl of theirs. There have been whispers of new reissues of all their albums, and honestly, I will be on that so hard. I'm at least nabbing copies of Hydroponic Garden, World of Sleepers, and Interloper at like whatever costs. But this is another brilliant album, if I'm being honest. I think this is their best since Interloper, and I very quickly pre-ordered this thing, and thank God I did, because it's pretty damn rare. So this is the first translucent blue pressing. I think I've seen this go for like 80 quid or so, so I'm unbelievably happy to have this, and the artwork really just kind of expands your whole sense of the story and world that this album is building. These images of like intergalactic travel and everything. I put this thing on all the time, and I can't wait to get more CBL on vinyl. And then I got a very exciting box set from Cardiacs, like a wild, very unique experimental 80s rock group. This is A Little Man in a House in the Whole World Window, which is I think like their second album, and one of their best in my opinion, but this is one of my dad's favourite bands, and he introduced me to them, and I'm a big convert now, and so he got me this for my birthday last year, kind of as a present to both of us really. This is an absolutely beautifully done book set of this album. Lots and lots of pages of lyrics and photos and stories, and then we've got just one disc of black vinyl, but then also this entire like little envelope of flyer replicas and memorabilia and everything, and at the end a whole 4 CDs of the album, and then a bunch of expanded material, live performances and stuff. This is just one of the most like premium feeling things I've ever got in my collection, and I believe the single most valuable according to Discogs. Not even 100% sure if these are still on sale, but if they are, I would absolutely fully give it my recommendation. The Chemical Brothers. Last time I showed off Surrender, and a bunch of different 12-inch singles from them. And I really need to pick up way more Chemical Brothers albums, because they are one of my kind of earliest huge musical obsessions, and I'd love to get Dig Your Own Hole, Push the Button, No Geography, pretty much any Chemicals LP to be honest, but I found a very good deal on Further when it was on sale, and this is one of my favourite albums of theirs. I'd say a hugely underrated modern classic from these guys. Fits so well together as a super cohesive 8-track experience. Escape Velocity and Dissolve and Swoon are all just like out-of-body experiences. This thing is so bombastic and cool. Great artwork inside the gatefold there as well. Throwing a bit of variety in here, this is Blood Moon by Converge. This is another Banquet sale find from last year. I think these guys are maybe classified as a metalcore band, but I'm not super up to scratch on my subgenres. What I do know is that they make music that goes bloody hard. I thoroughly enjoyed their album Jane Doe, and I just saw this gorgeous artwork, and despite not having heard this album, I thought it would be a good one to pick up. Very, very solid record, a lot more gothic than Jane Doe for sure, with Chelsea Wolfe on vocals, and an absolutely stunning looking pressing. Take a look at that. Reminds me that I really ought to have a whole lot more metal in my collection. Richard Dawson, The Ruby Chord. I talked about this album in my Gigs of 2023 video, but this was one of the most unexpected and striking musical finds of 2023 for me. This is absolutely unlike anything else I've heard before, to be honest. He's kind of a mix of folk rock and prog rock. This is a concept album mixing sci-fi with like medieval fantasy through the lens of like virtual reality, and with the first track on here, it is taken to such an unbelievably expansive scale of storytelling. A track that covers an entire disc of vinyl, both sides. The Hermit is just so beautifully, sweepingly powerful that it makes me tear up sometimes. I just had to get this on wax. And it's such a good fit for the format of vinyl as well. I love these extra illustrations. And it's also on lovely sky blue coloured vinyl. Cannot recommend enough, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing this guy's new album that's coming out soon. Here's one you're very unlikely to have actually heard of, Death Rattle in Shade. This was actually a random charity shop find, because I think it got sent there as overstock from the nearby record shop, but I just saw this labeled as like experimental electropop and thought, sure, why not? I'll just give it a random shot, and I was really pleasantly surprised. This is a very solid record, some very cool icy electronic arrangements, bit of a product of its time from 2014, but kind of in a nice slightly nostalgic way. Definitely quite an underrated band here for sure, and it's on white vinyl as a nice bonus. Always fun to just randomly stumble across something in an unusual way like that. Destiny Transition. This is a vaporwave artist off the Hiraeth Records label, and this is a full-on proper science fiction concept album about basically industrialization taking over a natural environment, and this thing just sounds stunning. I don't think I hear a bunch of people talking about this artist, but there's so much like sense of weight but also like open space to this album. Lovely gorgeous sound design and a stunning release here from the label. Vaporwave is always an incredibly visual genre where with the vinyl the art is a huge part of the appeal, and you've got a nice obi strip here and a gorgeous gatefold. These just really beautiful images. They did a fantastic job here, and the record is on a kind of amber vinyl that looks almost black until you hold it up to some light and it all just Glows. Super underrated release, I hope more people decide to check out. I picked up this Dire Straits record, Making Movies, bit of a classic, bit of 80s pop rock, not a whole lot to say on this one. Probably also want to pick up Brothers in Arms at some point, as a bit of a record collection essential. Another classic, Earth, Wind and Fire, I Am. This has got Boogie Wonderland on it, among other disco bangers, and this artwork is just so fun. Only in the 70s would something like this happen. I've got a self-titled EP from Floating Points. This has got a bunch of absolute bangers, including Vocoder, which also made it onto his fantastic recent album Cascade. I'd love to also own that, but this is just a beautiful, bright, clear and booming sounding 45 right here. I don't know why all of the self-explanatory 70s and 80s classics are bunched up together here, but I also got Welcome to the Pleasure Dome by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, which is way more of a weird album than I was expecting. Having only heard Relax, I mean, like, I know that is like a bit of a wild and outlandish track on its own, but this album is just kind of weird and wildly structured with some really short and really long tracks and a bunch of covers. It does come together a bit strangely, but you can't say it's not interesting. This thing is certainly bombastic and theatrical. Some wild artwork here, which I don't even know if I want to show on YouTube, to be honest. Circling back to the Future Sound of London from earlier, I picked up the Record Store Day pressing of From the Archives. This is a whole series of compilations they did of basically just bonus unreleased material, which was really strong on the whole and super interesting to delve into as a diehard fan of these guys. But they basically just compiled what they thought were the best cuts from that series to go on this, largely from the first volume. To be honest, I'd happily buy just like some crazy box set of all the different releases in that series, but this is fantastic just to have some of the best of them on wax. Hence why I made it my solitary Record Store Day purchase this year. And I also found this absolute techno firecracker they put out under the name Stacker called Humanoid. This is a 33 RPM like maxi single with 8 different versions of this track, taking it in a bunch of fun directions, and the disc is equally as colourful as the artwork here. I mean, it's not exactly brightly coloured, but it's just like a whole load of different colours smushed together. I wonder if they kind of just got some offcuts of different colours of vinyl, I don't know, but it's pretty cool and unique to find a 12-inch single from the 90s on this kind of vinyl. Got some more Peter Gabriel. I've got a bunch of other records from this guy, but I managed to pick up Security, aka Peter Gabriel 4, I believe, which is one of his absolute best in my opinion. But this is the German language version of this album, which is just called Deutsches Album. So a bit of an interesting oddity to have. My German skills have basically got to the point where I can pretty much understand the whole album, but it's kind of funny that I've now like got so used to hearing these versions rather than the English versions, and also that this is a German language album by an English artist that I bought in Italy. We are just globetrotting with this thing. Forgot to add this in for some reason, but last time I showed off my big box set of the complete works at the time of pressing of the German pastoral forest-themed ambient artist Gas. But since then I've added 2 new albums to my Gas collection. I've got Narcopop. This is one of his more divisive albums maybe, definitely one of his most minimalist, sort of subtly brooding but with some moments of ethereal beauty shining through. This is a really lovely pressing. Unfortunately, not super high production quality across the board with people, as the pages of my art book have just fallen out together, but I'll have to just glue those back. But when I do, it's just a wonderfully designed piece of work. These are some really gorgeous evocative images to go very kind of synesthetically with the music, and we've got both the CD here, and 3 discs of vinyl, including one lengthy bonus track which is exclusive to this vinyl pressing here. So despite the caveat of you potentially receiving a slightly damaged copy if you get this, it is just a wonderful lavish collector's item right here. Also picked up Rausch in a shop in Nuremberg, fittingly. This is his second most recent album, and probably his single darkest piece of work, and also most percussive. This thing is very creepy and disorientating at times, very strongly psychedelic, as its title suggests. Rausch means rush, but can mean sort of like frenzy or like a narcotized ecstasy, so it's got a lot of quite dark, intense connotations, and that definitely carries across into the music here. And the artwork is always knocked out of the park, and it's kind of the reason I've become so set on collecting all these things. And I just need one more, Der Lange Marsch, and then potentially also his debut, but that doesn't really fit into the Forest chronology here, as solid as it is. So really just one more record and I'll have an absolutely gorgeous set on my shelf. Oh, and coincidentally, right next to Gabriel, we have Genesis, the era of Genesis where he was a part of the band, and this is Selling England by the Pound. My favourite album I've heard from these guys so far, for sure, and there's some strange, mysterious writing on this one, which is why it was marked down a little bit in price, but I don't mind that at all. It just adds to the mystique, I guess. But this is a prog rock classic. I was so taken aback at just how not only like grand and technically impressive, but incredibly beautiful and bucolic this album is. Really wish I'd found this earlier in my life than I did, because it is an absolute stunner. Managed to pick up Crash Landing by Jimi Hendrix as one of a few different records my grandpa's passed on to me. This is, I believe, a posthumous album. It's very solid, but it's not one of his absolute best. I need to pick up Electric Ladyland at some point. That's another one of those essentials on my bucket list. But then we got Jon Hopkins, Immunity, which is honestly quickly becoming not just one of my favourite electronic albums of the 2010s, but of all time. I cannot get enough of this thing. It just scratches a particular itch of unbelievable, unparalleled sound design and organic beauty, and all being tied up in a neat little bow of a front to back experience that takes you on an entire like emotional arc. I could go on forever about this thing, but this is a recent remastered reissue version on lovely purple vinyl. Most importantly, it just sounds absolutely fantastic. Mwah! Managed to pick up Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation 1814, which is an absolute banging, pioneering electro swing album. This thing sounds so huge and cool. Great 80s production on here. And 2 more Michael Jackson records, Off the Wall and Bad. Definitely need no introduction. Got Tin Drum by Japan. This is a really cool bit of a kind of avant-garde 80s synth pop, a very idiosyncratic band here. Wonderfully atmospheric tracks such as Ghosts. This was part of a very good deal of like a whole bundle, but unfortunately it had this shrink wrap which is kind of stuck to the record, and I peeled it off and it made a bit of a mess, so I might try and get one of these with a better sleeve, but super cool music at least. Carole King, Tapestry, some gorgeous, I guess sort of soul adjacent soft rock from the 60s. Just a beautiful voice and some incredibly recognizable pieces on here. Bob Marley and the Wailers, Exodus. This is a huge reggae classic and probably the only reggae record in my collection now. Not many tracks on here that I'd previously heard, but it all comes together wonderfully. And Paul and Linda McCartney with Ram. This was another rare example of finding something actually solid in a charity shop in terms of vinyl, but I hadn't heard this record before, and I was just really pleasantly surprised with the direction he actually went in with this one. It's very wild, wacky, and colourful. It's got a lot of unexpected twists and turns and fun arrangements and instrumentation. Definitely recommend this as a sort of proto-indie rock album. Nena 99 Red Balloons, such an iconic piece of new wave music. I'm about to start yapping about Germany again, but I am gonna be doing German at uni, so you'd kind of hope I would be able to yap about it a bit. Just like knowing all of the historical context behind this piece of music and its cultural relevance in the lead up to the fall of the Berlin Wall. This is just such a landmark pop track and so fun to listen to. Another very recent addition, Squarepusher with Ultra Visitor, 20th anniversary repress. This is the first Squarepusher album I've got on vinyl, and the first repress of this album. Last time I actually showed a 12-inch single of a couple of the tracks on here that I got like specifically because I thought I might never be able to get this album. But here we are, and it's remastered and it sounds fantastic. We've got the main album on here as well as this whole bonus 12-inch EP and a booklet, lovely pressing here, and an absolutely out of this world, wild, insane album, providing an experience you really can't get from any other artist. Incredibly highly recommend to IDM, drill and bass, and jazz fans alike. I also added to my Tangerine Dream collection their soundtrack to the William Friedkin film Sorcerer. Very interesting bit of early dark ambient music here, and one of Tangerine Dream's best soundtracks in my opinion. Continuing on the theme of early synth pioneers, I got Tomita's greatest hits record, another surprising charity shop find, and I'm yet to put this on yet, but it has his version of the Star Wars title. I'm a big Star Wars head, so I had to see what the fusion of those two worlds would be like. I'll absolutely be putting this on soon. I lied about the whole only having one reggae thing because this is Stevie Wonder's Hotter Than July, which definitely goes a whole lot more in that direction than anything he'd done before up to this point. I've also obviously got Songs in the Key of Life, which just outclasses anything else he's done and almost any other music in general, but this is also a valuable addition to my collection. And finally for this video, my only Zed, this is the Zero album, Helvetera. Another Vaporwave album off Heraith Records, and a very niche name here. I just picked this up in a big blowout sale they were doing. I definitely feel like this artist has carved their own little niche of a bit more of a dark and industrial, almost gothic take on the typical sounds of this genre. And there you go! We're all up to date. Sorry again for you guys literally not seeing me for a quarter of a year. You definitely won't now have to wait that long again because I've got my Spotify Wrapped reaction planned, and then all the usual year-end lists. So thank you so much for watching and see you very soon.